something that really, truly mattered. Because we also have to remember that winning and losing is just a game. And that's really hard for me to put in perspective sometimes, but you still have to. When I was playing for the New England Patriots, yes, I played for them. It was about 3 weeks, but it was a few days. I signed with the team, and we were getting ready to go to fall camp, and a few weeks before, I got a call from my agents that told me that I had a huge deal that was offering me a whole lot of money for 1 day of work, actually only a couple of hours of work, and they were giving me a whole lot of money to do that, and I was like shocked. I was like, they're giving me all that just literally for a couple of hours? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay, that sounds awesome, but before you tell them yes, just hold on, let me call Coach Belichick real quick. Because when I had signed, you know, as something that as a backup quarterback and following Tom, you just want to kind of stay under the radar. And so I just called, you know, Coach Belichick and said, hey, Coach, just want to tell you this opportunity, but you know, I still want to do it, you know, honor you and be out of the way and not too much in the limelight. And he said, well, Timmy, I'll tell you what, I would appreciate if you just said no to it. And he didn't tell me to, it'd just be his choice. And so for me, it's like, well, all right, of course, I'll do that. But guys, I had this opportunity where just a couple hours of work and they would have paid me $1 million. And that's a whole lot of money that can change a whole lot of lives. But, you know, for me, I was so passionate about it. I loved it. I was willing to sacrifice. Game that I love. So you know what? No, I'll turn down the job. I'm not going to do it. Coach, I won't do it. Don't worry about it. Not even something. And you know what? Doesn't mean it always pans out. It was like 3 weeks later I got cut. But I didn't regret it because it was something that I loved. I was passionate about it and I was willing to sacrifice. But again, you should ask me, holy cow, Timmy, if you were willing to do that, then what would you be willing to risk, to put on the line for your faith, for your family, for what really matters? You see, it's easy to just talk about it every now and then, but when you have to make those big choices, I'm going to say no to that because I love this. That gets really, really hard, really fast. Really fast. You know, when I was 15 years old, I went on my first mission trip to the Philippines, and on this mission trip, we got to do so many amazing things. We were in hospitals, prisons, schools, orphanages. But on the last week of the trip, the Philippines is made up of thousands of islands, and so we're in one of the most remote islands, and it took us forever to get there, and we get there and we're hiking up this island, and we get to finally where there's vehicles, and we get to a Jeep, and it takes us to the top of the mountain, and we get out and we go into this village, and Filipinos are always excited to see Americans, but this was different. I mean, when we walk in, people literally put down anything and everything they're doing and run up to us because we found out it was the first time that this village had ever had visitors in the history of this village. So it was the biggest thing that had ever taken place in this village's history, and people were freaking out. They put down whatever they were doing and ran to us and grabbing our skin and our hair and giving us hugs and holding our hands, and they couldn't believe it. They were so excited to see visitors, to see Americans, to see us. So we gather everyone at the local high school. By that I mean just this open field, and it was my opportunity to share the good news of the gospel, and so I begin to share, and people are literally fighting to get as close to us as possible. Row 1 is like on my feet, and I can touch row 7. That's how close everyone is packed into me, and I begin to share, and I see 3 boys in the back right corner turn and walk away. And it might not sound that unusual, but in this moment it was, because no one was leaving, no one was talking. The only thing they would do was fight to get a little bit closer to us. But these 3 middle school age boys turned and walk away, and it blew my mind. And for some reason I saw it, and it left such an imprint on my mind. And the whole time I'm talking, I can't stop thinking about these 3 boys. And so we finish, and so many people come to know the Lord, and it's awesome, and they're giving us hugs, but I had to get away from everyone, and I had to go see if I could try to find these 3 boys. So I get away, and I walk to the back of the school, and I can't find them anywhere, and then I'm looking in the distance, and about 200 yards away, there's this bamboo hut, and one of the boys crawls from out of the bamboo hut and comes walking towards me, and I meet him halfway, and I say hello, and he says nothing to me. He just grabs me by 2 of my fingers, and he pulls me to the bamboo hut. He crawls in, and so I crawl in behind him, and when I get in the hut, I see the other 2 boys, and at first it looked like everything was okay. One of them is laying on a bamboo cot, and the other one is holding his hand, rubbing it like this. But then I look at the boy laying on the cot, and I get to his legs, and I could see that his legs were on backwards. And it was the first time that I had seen anything like this, and I'm kind of a little bit emotional, but kind of holding in tears, and I just get on my knees and I start talking to these 3 boys, and we're having an amazing conversation. I'm telling them why we're there, but the whole time that we're talking, I had to ask, why did you leave? Why did you leave? Sherwin, the boy laying on the bamboo cot, that's his name, and he looks at me and he says, our principal, she really wanted to impress the Americans, and she told me that I am not very impressive. So instantly when he tells me this, my heart's starting to ache, but at the same time I know why I'm there. I know that I'm here for Sherwin and his 2 friends, and so we're having this amazing time together, but then the rest of our team comes, and they've been looking for me for a while, and they find me in this bamboo hut. And they're like, Timmy, we gotta go. And I'm like, oh, all right. And yeah, at first I'm like, no, I'll never leave. And they're like, yes, you will, let's go. And so Sherwin's like, will you at least carry me? I'm like, of course. So I pick up Sherwin, and we walk out of the bamboo hut, and what was amazing is, right when I pick him up, one of his friends grabs one of his hands, and the other one grabs one of his feet. And they would never let him go, and we walk out of the bamboo hut, and it was all of our team, but then it was all of the Filipinos as well. And so I take a step, and then all of the Filipinos back away. And I take another step, and all of them back away again. And I take another step, and they back away, and I've probably taken about 5 or 6 steps, and every time they keep backing away. And what we came to realize is they weren't walking away from me, as they were backing away from Sherwin, because they had been told, and they believed that Sherwin, because he was born with his feet on backwards, was cursed, was less than, was insignificant, and wasn't seen fit to be part of their village. But you also have to understand that for the first time in a lot of their lives, they just heard the good news of the Gospels, that there's a God that loves them so much, He sent His Son for them, and that they have a plan for every single one of us, and that we are loved and we are special, and He loves every single one of us. Doesn't matter how you're born, what you look like, where you're from, that you're loved. And so you could tell everything that they had heard for so long versus what they had just heard and what God's doing in their heart. And finally, after about 10 steps or so, one of the elders from the village, she comes up to me and Sherwin, and she puts her hand kind of on Sherwin's shoulder area, as to finally say, you're now welcome here. And then I take another couple of steps, and another one of the older people in the village come up and touch Sherwin on the shoulders to also say, you're welcome here. And then another one, and another one, and another one, and then it becomes popular, so everybody's kind of cheering and tapping for Sherwin as we walk by. And finally, we get by everyone, and we get to ourselves in the corner about 10 feet away from the Jeep, and I set Sherwin down, and I put his arms over his 2 friends, because he can't support himself, he can't walk, he's never walked a day in his life. And I get on my knees, and I pray with these 3 boys, and they put their trust in Jesus, and I look at Sherwin and his 2 friends, and I say, guys, I don't know if I'm gonna ever see you again in the Philippines, or if you'll ever see me in America, but I totally believe with all my heart that one day I'm going to see you in heaven. And Sherwin looks at me and he says, Kuya Timmy, which means brother, I can't wait to run with you in heaven. There's a boy who's never walked a day in his life. But no one told him that, about what instant faith can do. And they're crying, I'm crying, some of our team's crying, and I get in the Jeep and we're driving down the mountain and with tears flowing down the side of my face. You know, up until then I knew that I wanted to be the best athlete I could be. You know, I didn't know what sport it was going to be, and I definitely didn't know I was going to try too. But I knew that was something that I loved, I was passionate about, I was willing to sacrifice. But driving down that mountain, I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do with my life, though. It's not who I am, it's not what I am, it's not my life's mission. See, up until then, you could have said, man, it's football, baseball, basketball, I love it. But driving down that mountain, God put in my heart, no, you're not here for a game. You're here for people. You're here for Sherwin. That's why you were on this trip. And in writing the mission statement to my foundation, our goal is to bring faith, hope, and love to those needing a brighter day in their darkest hour of need. You know, I love that mission statement, but the reason that I wrote it was because of Sherwin. Every single word was because of Sherwin. When I was thinking about the mission statement, I was just picturing Sherwin. To bring faith, hope, and love to those needing a brighter day in their darkest hour of need. That was Sherwin, where he was at. And you know what, guys? Sherwin was a pretty incredible story, and it was a time that touched my life and changed my life. But you know what? Maybe the most powerful part of it wasn't Sherwin. It was his two friends. Because could you imagine in your city, in your town, in your village, if the biggest thing that had ever taken place was going on, and you had a friend in need, but not a popular one, honestly, one that everybody disliked, most people hated, and they couldn't even stand. Would you be willing to say, you know what? I don't have to be in with everybody. I don't have to be cool. I don't have to be liked. I don't have to be in with anyone else, because helping this person is more important than any of that. But that's what his two friends did. And you see, one of them was sitting there holding his hand, and the coolest part, the other one heard that the Americans were there to share good news. Because right when we come in, we share, hey, we want to share good news with you, the good news of the gospel. So all this one boy heard was, hey, they have good news. Well, if they really have good news, then I gotta find a way to bring the good news to my friend Sherwin. And so he goes and looks for one of the Americans who knows the good news. And he grabs me and he brings me to his friend to share the good news. See, that paints an incredible picture, I believe, of how we're supposed to live our lives. Man, when there's people that are hurting, there are people that are in need, there are people that need your help. They could be in a hospital, they could be in your family, they could be your neighbors, they could be your friends. There's a lot of people that are hurting and need someone to come alongside them, to hold their hand, and even more importantly, to bring someone to tell the good news. Because the good news is better than any other news we're ever going to hear. It's better than any news that someone can tell them on the paper or on TV. The news is that God loves them and God has a plan for them and God sent his son to die for them. And it's life-changing news. When I was a sophomore in college, I was blessed to win the Heisman Trophy, and it's a really amazing award, and you don't even realize when you win it how big and how cool it is. And I was still a boy when I won it, and I was so blessed to win it, and thank you. Solid. Thank you. I'll just toss it down here with all the other waters. And I was so blessed to win this award. You don't even realize how kind of unique and special it is. And then after I won that, I think I was 20 or 21 at the time, and after that, I got an invite to go to Thailand to speak to all of the missionaries that were gathering for a convention from all over Southeast Asia. And so I was just super humbling, and I was like, sure, I'll go see them and say hey to them, and I don't know what I'm going to say, but I'll go. And so I decided, yes, I'll go see him. And so I get on this plane, I'm flying to Thailand, and my sister actually happened to be one of those missionaries, and she's one of my heroes, and all these missionaries are my heroes, and my dad was a missionary, that's one of my heroes, and all these people, and I'm like, dude, what the heck am I gonna say? I'm like 20 years old on this plane to Thailand. What the heck am I gonna say to all these missionaries that are putting their life on the line for the gospel every single day? I mean, their lives truly matter for eternity, and they're significant, and they have meaning and purpose every day. What am I gonna share with them? Well, that story I told you in Tebow. See, after that first game, the next day we went to church. I wanted to tell everybody how I did. Hey, guess what? I hit a couple home runs. I did this, I did that, blah, blah, blah. And I was a pretty arrogant little kid. So after that first game, my parents instilled a rule in our entire family, but really just for me, that my siblings were not happy, that you can't tell people how you do in games. You can mention it to you if they ask you, and before you play another game, you have to memorize a scripture verse on humility. And I would have to do that before every single one of my games. Well, one of those first verses that I memorized was, the greatest among you shall be a servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. So my parents made me memorize that verse when I was 4, almost 5 years old, and then I'm on my way to Thailand to speak to all these missionaries that had gathered from all over the local countries, and God brings that verse to my head. The greatest among you shall be a servant. And I was like, oh, thanks, Mom, thanks, Dad. Good call with making me memorize the verses. And I was like, that's the perfect verse to be able to share with them. And I was able to share with these missionaries that had gathered from all over this Bible verse, how the greatest among you is a servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. And you have truly humbled yourself. And if the world could see you through God's eyes, you would be the ones winning the Heisman Trophy, not me. Not me. And then later after that, we got to go into the different areas and around all of Thailand. We got to see, and we got to help, and we got to, be part of different amazing things. But one of the things we got to go to was a feeding, and it was pretty incredible, because in this feeding was literally rows farther than you can pretty much see. And maybe as many people as here tonight are there because their last hope is to be able to get some food that day so they can actually live for tomorrow. They're truly begging for their last meal. And you know what? They might not have enough food for everyone, so if you're too far back in line, you might not get food. You might not make it till tomorrow. So when we get there, we're looking, we're helping, we're talking to people, and we're trying to encourage people, but it's kind of overwhelming. You're like, what the heck am I going to do? Then one of the locals comes and grabs me and kind of takes me by my shirt, and some of the people there were kind of nervous. I was like, it's okay. And he's speaking broken English, and I can't really understand him, and he says, come sir, Tebow, right? I was like, yeah. I was like, come sir. And so he kind of brings me, and we kind of go from the back of the line near the front, and he says, look. And I was like, I can't see anything. He's like, no. So he brings me a little closer, and he says, look. And it was this little boy, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, maybe older, and just looks younger because he was starving and malnourished. But he's sitting there squatting in line, hoping that day he was going to get food. And that little boy was wearing an orange and blue, torn up, number 15 Florida Gator Tim Tebow jersey. First of all, it must have been a Seminole that sent it over there. But it truly put into perspective what really matters. Is it about a game? No. Is life about a game? No. That boy didn't care who represented that jersey. He was truly hoping that day wasn't going to be his last day, and he was going to find food on that day, and he was going to be able to continue to live. That young boy, he was starving for hope. Kind of puts into perspective what really matters. A couple of years ago, I was in a death row, and it's one of my favorite things to do is to go to prisons and to share with inmates, because I believe the greatest form of love is to choose the best interests of another person and act on their behalf. And that's what God did for us by sending his son, and I believe that's what we're called to do for people, is to choose their best interests and act on their behalf, to truly love people. And I believe that the greatest form of love is a choice. And so I try to make that choice and go to prisons. And this day, me and one of my brothers and one of my friends, we were in one of the death rows here in Florida. And there were 342 inmates that day on death row. We started early in the morning, and we went cell to cell to cell to cell through all the way to the end, 342. And it's a long day, and it's a hard day. And as you can imagine, they share what they've done, and they share hard things, and they put a lot of weight and burden on you, and it's tiring and it's exhausting. And we got there early in the morning, and now it was already into the evening, and we had been there for 8-9 hours already, and we were tired. We were exhausted. We hadn't eaten all day, and so we finished in the back right corner of death row, and no one's really saying anything, but we're making this long walk back, a quarter of a mile exactly, to the entrance into the death row prison. And it's kind of an amazing picture because it's nighttime now, so all the lights are off where we're walking, but we're walking towards the only light that's really on. And so you're walking towards the light, and we're all exhausted, and we're all tired, and we're starving. And we get about 10 feet till we're about to take the left to walk through the doors, and then there's chains, and then there's doors, and there's chains, and then there's the parking lot with our car, and we're getting ready to take the left. And my buddy says to the warden, "Hey, warden, what's down that hallway?" And it was the only hallway we hadn't been down the entire day. And warden says to my buddy, "That's suicide watch." And he said, "Are there any inmates in suicide watch?" He said, "Yeah, there's 4. My buddy said, "Is there any chance that we can see those inmates?" He said, "Yeah, I'll let you see them." So then they both look at me, and I was like, kind of like, "Can we do it?" And I was like, "Of course we're going to go do it. Guilt trip me more." So we walk into suicide watch, and we go up to door number 1, and it doesn't go very well. And we walk up to door number 2, and it doesn't go very well. And then we get ready to walk up to door number 3, and right before we do, the warden grabs me by my forearm, and he says, "Hold on a second. Timmy, I think you should know that obviously that inmate's in here for murder, but you should know a couple of days ago he also killed another one of our inmates, and he will do anything possible to kill himself. He has truly, truly lost all hope." So the warden walks in front of me, and he walks up to this cell, which is literally a steel cell all the way around, with the only place you can see in is a tiny bit of plexiglass that's about like this, but it's super thick. So it's really hard to see in, and it's really hard to see out. And the warden walks, and he taps on the plexiglass and said, "Hey man, you got a special visitor you might want to come see." So this man that's standing in the back of that cell, his feet are chained, and his knees are chained, and his waist is chained, and his arms are chained, and his hands are chained. And literally the only thing he can move is his fingers and take a tiny step like this, because he would do anything possible to kill himself. And on the inside of the cell is literally padded walls, padded floors, padded ceiling. And so I can hear the chains every time this man takes a step. So I walk up to the front of the cell, and I can't really see in, I can't see him, and I can hear him walking towards the front, but I can't see him. But I hear him getting closer and closer, and I can kind of see his image, but I can't see him, and he can't see me. And so I press my face to the plexiglass so I could finally see in, and then he gets to the front of the cell and he presses his face to the plexiglass, and finally we meet nose to nose, eyes to eyes. And right when he sees me, his reaction was, "You're a Christian." And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." I said, "Do you know why we're here?" He said, "Nah." I said, "We're here to tell you that God loves you." And instantly, he falls to the ground and begins to weep uncontrollably for about 5 minutes or so. Takes him another few minutes just to get back to his feet and all of his chains, and he finally gets back up and he presses his face to the plexiglass and he taps the plexiglass with one finger just like this. And tears flowing down the side of his face, he says to me, "You might not believe me, but right before you walked up 5 minutes ago, I prayed and I told God, I prayed for the first time in a long time, and I told God, I said, God, you ain't ever been there for me. My entire life I have been abused, I have been neglected, I have been thrown away. The people that were supposed to love me betrayed me, the people that were supposed to have my back left. And if you were real, and if you were out there, and you will do, if you were real and you were out there, then show up. Show me that you are real, and if you don't, I will do anything possible to kill myself." And then he looked me right in the eye and said, "That's why I said you're a Christian, because that was God answering my prayer, that he heard me and that he's real." And I got to share with this young man who's younger than I am, but yeah, he heard you, and he's real, and he loves you like crazy. And your life might not have been easy, and I don't know everything that you've been through, but I can tell you this, that there's a God that loves you so much that he sent his son on a rescue mission for you. You see, a lot of people will say, Jesus, he came and he hung out, he came and he did some cool things, he came and he performed some miracles. No, don't get the game twisted. Jesus came on a rescue mission for you, for me, for my young friend in prison, for every single one of us. He came on a rescue mission. And I got to share with this young man how, listen, you're going to be in a cell probably the rest of your life. But man, I'm so glad I get to tell you that you can be free on the inside. Because when Jesus came on that rescue mission for you, he lived a life that we couldn't live. But he chose to die a death that we deserve to die. And when Jesus was hanging on Calvary's cross, everything wrong that I have done in my life, he paid for. Everything wrong that you have done in your life, he paid for. Everything wrong that my friend in prison did, he paid for. And he would say, whoa, but even me, even what I've done, he still loves me that much. He died for what I did? Yeah. All of it. Whatever it is. He loves you so much. And he paid for it. All of it. All of it. I said, you know what? And after Jesus paid for that on Calvary's cross, he died on that cross and he was buried. But man, let me tell you the best part.